Tying back to the original topic of, vicarious trauma, right? So there's this grant locally that individuals that may be part of the mental health system or whatever, OMH, let me say that, that they give you up to $500 depending on the need or whatnot, right? And I did that when it first came around, but I haven't been doing that. I was fortunate enough to be in a position to have the things that I need, right? But helping somebody else that's in the shelter that may need stuff, that's having a hard time to get things, right? And the trauma part for me was they gave me hell to get that money for the things that I needed or whatever the case may be. And then when I did it with one of my peers or whatnot, they gave some without a problem. And I felt some kind of way. I'm like, damn, I remember I did this. They gave me like all types of hoops to jump through. I had to do this, that. And all he had to do was submit it. And he got his check. I don't know why I'm bringing that up, but I guess tying back into the conversation or whatnot, that kind of bothered me. I was heated in that moment. The guy emailed me, yeah, okay, he's approved. Keep eye out for the check. It should be coming to the office. Oh, okay. In my mind, I'm cursing this dude out. I'm like, oh, you bastard, so on and so forth. Just me and my shit.
Because we're all dealing with different healthcare systems.
Same people, same person, just different names.
And there was no face-to-face interaction, right? It was just like straight paperwork.
Yeah, straight paperwork.
Yeah, that sucks.
I'm glad though that you brought it back to the point of vicarious trauma, because sometimes we don't experience trauma just from people opening up about what they've already gone through. Sometimes it's stuff that they are currently going through, whether it's something like that, trying to find housing, these are all things that can be really triggering. And like I had said in the opening of the episode, it's 2021, it's currently May now. And while I no longer work as a peer specialist, I do still do peer work because I work in a residential treatment facility with young people between the ages of 12 and 18. And there are things going on in the world right now that, again, can be hard to separate from the work that we do. And so when our girls are fighting in the treatment, in the facility, it kind of is one of those re-triggering things for me where if I'm hearing things that are going on in the world where a 16-year-old is being shot by the police in a fight herself, then in a way I'm experiencing a vicarious trauma through that person's life. While I've never lost anybody to police violence or anything like that, it's still a burden that I think we bear, whether as just people in general because of our humanity, or Black people, and specifically seeing our friends, our sisters, our brothers, our family members in those people. And I think that it's good that we're having the conversation of self-care and how we take care of ourselves when we're experiencing these things, because it can be really hard to experience vicarious trauma through worldly things, and then also the stuff that we go to work with and deal with. And it can be hard to feel things are just unfair, whether it's for the person that we're talking to and the person that we're supporting, or it's feeling unfair for us. Sometimes it feels unfair that we have to be re-triggered about these things, or not feeling necessarily supported, because while peer support can be a two-way street, sometimes people don't know how to support you back, and you might tell your story to somebody who's just sitting there okay, and it's not as healing as you might hope that it can be. So I just wanted to come back full circle to the topic in general of vicarious trauma, and raise the point of us as peers and as Black peers at that we do experience a lot of re-triggering sometimes, and we do have to redo some of the work that we've already done because we're trying to support people, but we're also carrying the burden that the world is placing on us as Black people. And in the roles of Black peers and trying to help other people not end up in those kind of situations. Like when we see police being called to mental health calls, and they send these people to do welfare checks, and then people end up dead. And then you're like, damn, like, God forbid that's one of my participants, or God forbid that's me or somebody that I love. And I'm not speaking for you guys can like jump in about this, but I know for me, like, that shit's really hard to deal with. And that's when I have to make sure I am doing my self-care, and I am trying to separate, like, that was that person's situation, and like all I can do is support the people that I love and the people that I work with, so that that doesn't become their story.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, go ahead, Drew, I'm sorry.
I think Maya just brought up a good point about, like, first of all, that's very, like, kind of you. I don't know if kind is the right word, but to see something happening to somebody else is empathetic when you see, right? And then you take on that.
Yeah.
So I think that's really crazy that you can see something, not crazy, but interesting that you can see somebody on the news being attacked by police, and then you take on that, like, damn, that could have been me. And I don't think a lot of people do that. I think people see it on the news and be like, wow, that sucks to suck. I mean, you probably shouldn't have gotten to that in the first place. But then when I had my experience with the police, when I was like having an episode, all that just flashed back to me. It was like, oh, like, I'm a Black man in America. This cop just pulled a gun on me. I don't know what's going to happen right now. It happened so quickly, but so I guess that's probably why it was hard to go to work, watching the protests happen on the news, and still have to go to work when they're like, yo, they're literally like attacking us on the streets. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I never looked at it in that perspective, or maybe I just didn't have the words for it before.
Mm-hmm.
Conda.
I have considered myself an empath, which is why I do the work that I do, because I do feel other people's feelings a lot. And like, it sucks, like, to be that way sometimes, because I'm constantly in a state of grieving for people I don't know. I'm constantly in a state of hurting and crying for people I don't know. I think I cry easier for other people than I cry for myself in my own situation.
You ain't never lied. I'm right along with you on that. I'm the same. Like, I'm a big baby when it comes. I'm sorry to go ahead. I ain't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. And that is the core of like what we're talking about, when you experience these things and you feel so strongly about them, and they weigh on you, and they weigh on you as a person, and they weigh on you in the work that we do. And that's why it's just important to like make sure we are taking care of ourselves, so we don't send ourselves into crisis and like end up hospitalized or not being like able to support other people. So being able to like accept that support for ourselves and like talk about these things is really just, I think, great. And I'm glad that we are talking about it and like raising these points and highlighting it for the people who are listening, whether they themselves are experiencing this as a peer specialist or as somebody who is receiving some kind of peer support, whether they're part of a program or a peer support group, or somebody who has themselves kind of like supported someone and felt, you know, like, wow, I feel re-triggered by this thing, even though I feel healed from it. Or like, why am I feeling this way when, you know, I might not have experienced losing somebody to police brutality or a car accident, or, you know, somebody who's gone through sexual assault. You don't have to necessarily have gone through it to be able to like empathize and say like, holy shit, like that is a very heavy thing to have gone through. And if you do know somebody who's gone through that, or you have gone through it yourself, then it's twice as heavy a burden, because you've gone through it and you have experienced it, or you know somebody who has, and like, you know the ways that it affects our mental health, and it's just like super important to be able to have that support and to give that support, but also again take care of ourselves, so that the vicarious trauma doesn't put us in a place where we like feel so overwhelmed that we no longer want to deal with it, which unfortunately for some people happens.
Yeah.